And so the Comanches raided people for whatever they could make themselves. They particularly like pots and pans. The women like metal pots and pans. The men like to break them on rocks and sharpen the shards of metal into arrowheads. They didn't like guns because you can't make ammo, so they didn't like that. They were better shots with bows and arrows than they were with guns anyway. And so the Comanche, again, they raided 100 miles east into Texas. And when they raided Homestead, they'd kill everybody, take everything that was not nailed down that they wanted, burn the rest. Women, they would typically rape until they got bored and killed them. Sometimes they would abduct them. The last big chief of the Comanches was a guy named Quanah Parker. His mother was a woman named Cynthia Ann Parker who'd been abducted in the 1840s. And years later, when they found her, they killed some Comanches. They found her, and she looked funny, and they realized she's actually a white lady. And they took her back to one of the forts, and she kept trying to run away, and she didn't speak English anymore. And when they finally got someone who spoke Comanche, she said, "I want to go back to my family. I have kids." And they said, "Well, don't you want to go back to your white family?" And she said, "No, I don't remember them. I don't have anything to do with them." That was a horrible moment for the Westerners to realize that this sort of the civilizedness of a person, the sort of white civilized nature of a person could literally be taken away from you by the Indians. They could make you one of them, right? The Spanish discovered that when they had shipwrecked off the coast of Central America, and some of the Spanish sailors ended up joining the Maya Indians. And the Spanish thought, surely you would not do that just as a temporary thing to survive. And the Spanish sailors, they didn't want to leave. They said, some of them had family, had kids, and the Spanish were horrified. Why would you want to stay here with these savages in the jungle? What would be meaningful about that? And so, if you ever watch John Wayne movies, pretty much the best John Wayne movies, The Searchers, which is about the story of Cynthia Ann Parker, about the guy who goes looking for the woman who's been abducted, and then finds her at the end. And so, you can understand, on the one hand, the Comanches say, look, we've been here for hundreds of years. We migrated out of central Mexico in like the 1200s, as far as we can tell from the archaeology. This is our territory. On the other hand, of course, the settlers say, well, no, we settled it. We put the fences up. We cleared the land. We put in the crops. We built the houses. And so you can understand why when the Civil War's over and the violence flares back up on the Great Plains, the settlers, the states, they want the federal government to do something, protect us, right? And ultimately it comes down to the fact that the nomadic Indians who travel from place to place in large groups, who go seasonally, they follow the buffalo herds, they kill the buffalo for meat, they wear the buffalo robes, they make teepees out of the buffalo hide, they boil the buffaloes for glue, they make bows and arrows out of it. They need the buffalo to survive, they need the Great Plains as a place for the buffalo to live. The farmers who settle don't want those guys. Right? It's a sort of an irresistible force meeting in immovable logic, and conflict between the Indian tribes and the government is inevitable. Right? At the end of the day, these tax-paying citizens want you to protect them from Indians, and they have a good claim on your authority. On the other hand, of course, gosh, the Indians have been there since the beginning of who knows, the Bronze Age or something. But the government doesn't see them as sort of they don't view that as a reasonable thing. Right? After all, the Indians are just savages. Right? They're not even building buildings today. They're not using the territory, so why should they be allowed to have it, right? And so ultimately, there are a few attempts to sort of do something about this in a reasonable way. There are conferences in 1867 and 68 to try to convince the Indians to come to the table. It tries to head off the violence. They fail. There's a few reasons. Reconstruction is happening. Congress is not really interested in this. They view it as a sort of a total sideshow, right? I mean, it's who cares? Indians, what? The Indians, as you might imagine, don't trust the federal government, right? The Indians are not stupid. There's a whole bunch of Indians in Oklahoma who didn't used to live there. And they got essentially dumped in Oklahoma in the 1830s by the Jackson administration. And they had treaties with the government guaranteeing them access to South Carolina in perpetuity, where they lived. The Jackson administration rounded them up and dragged them to Oklahoma and dumped them there. So if you say to a Comanche, why don't you negotiate with the government? What would he say? You should trust this government, right? Like the Cherokee did, like the Choctaw did, like the Creek did, like the Seminole did. Give me a break. And on top of that, how do you even negotiate with the Comanches, right? It's not like it's France where there's a king and you can just say, okay, well, you're the French king, let's talk. The Comanches are this totally anarchistic society. You can negotiate with a 5-person group and you're going to do that 1,000 times, right? The very act of negotiating might make a band decide they don't want you as their leader and they just leave. And so the government has this conception of the Indians as sort of, like a country, right? You go ask them, who's your leader? Take us to your leader. We'll talk to him. It doesn't work like that sometimes. Some of them it does. The Pueblo have leaders, right? Some of them do. Some of them don't. And so those things kind of fall apart. And at the end of the day, the government is really not super interested in that. And so the control of the Indian problem, you might say, falls into the hands of two guys that we can mention. And it falls into the hands of, on the one hand, your friend and mine, William Tecumseh Sherman, where there he is. There's William Tecumseh Sherman. That's small Sherman, not big Sherman. And so you can see William Tecumseh Sherman. There he is, right there. On the one hand, and in some cases his deputy, right there. Philip Sheridan, right? And so Sheridan and Sherman, they're soldiers. Sherman does not want this job. He's not a negotiator. He's not an Indian agent. He doesn't know anything about Indians. Ironically, his middle name is an Indian name. But Sherman is blunt. He's a soldier. If you tell him to deal with the Indians, he's going to deal with them the way he sees fit, which is blowing them up. And he says, all Indians who do not adopt our ways and move onto reservations will be destroyed. And that's his attitude, right? Sheridan is characteristically more blunt. He was one of the only good cavalry commanders to come out of the Union Army in the Civil War. Union cavalry is a joke most of the time. He destroyed the Shenandoah Valley to deny it to the Confederates, and he did it by burning the entire valley north to south. And at the end of the campaign in 1864, he reported to Grant and said, General, a crow flying over the Shenandoah Valley would be obliged to carry its own food with it lest it starve. And so if you understand that's the kind of guy Sheridan is, that's what he's going to do to Indians, right? He's here for the white settlers. He's here to protect them, and there it is. In an interview with a reporter at one of the forts out west, the reporter's trying to ask Sheridan, is there any nuance to your picture? Is there any nuance to what you would want to do? Finally, kind of frustrated and annoyed, the reporter sees an Indian walk by in a suit. Right? He says, oh, surely that guy's a good Indian, right? He's wearing a suit. And Sheridan allegedly blurts out, no, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. Right? And so that seems to be the attitude of the military. To be totally fair to Sherman, he would say, look, what do you want from me, right? When the Bureau of Indian Affairs can't handle it, and the federal government doesn't want to do it, and they give it to the Army, what do you expect the Army to do? Right? If not this. And so you can suggest that the tragedy of it all is a fight between the Indians and the government is essentially inevitable. The settlers want land, right? They want farmland, there's resources out there, there's gold out there, there's money to be made ranching cattle. They want the Indians out of the way, and violence seems to be the way that they're going to do it, right? So when we get together next week, we will talk about the Indian Wars briefly, because we need to move on. We will talk then also about the development of the economy, the labor movement, and industry as well. And probably I will also give you guys a review sheet, so I've gone ahead and done that. So remember, we will not meet Wednesday because it is the 4th of July, so I'll see everybody a week from today. And so we'll do that. If there's any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see everybody then. Probably in 2 weeks, I would think. Yeah, not.
We'll have to review, and then we'll have the extra class period.
Yeah.
Oh, get ready for it.
Because I think finishing the unions would be like great on Monday, and foreign policy on Wednesday, which would be the test would be 2 weeks from today, right? Not next Monday, but the Monday after. It's like that's also going pretty fast, so it might even be the Wednesday after that.
There's a lot of content too.
It does. We do go fast, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not, like I said, there's not really a way around that.
But it's cool to have a couple weeks.
Yeah, I would definitely try to give you the review at least like a week ahead of time, so that, as I said, I give you the reviews, you can bring it back to me with a question, and then the test would happen.
Very cool. Thank you.
So, the usual procedure is if you go over there and let them know that you're here for this class, my name, somebody will already be waiting for me. Yeah, and then they'll have a whole thing works, and usually what they want to do is go over. And the good news is they've got because they're still open, so you can just go right from this class over. And after this class, you go over and take your notes, and get you to copy them. And when the copier will set it up, absolutely, we'll see you next time. They will scan up and just down right to the coordinator, who will just forward them right to the student.
Gotcha.
So once the whole thing starts, it's actually really kind of painless. And you just go and you just do the thing, have 10 minutes after the class, and it should not be a problem. And then usually it takes a minute for them to process the whole payment thing. But within a little while, they should pay you, and it should amount to the cost of the class.
All right. That's really
yeah,
cool.
it pays it's like $7 an hour, and they say it amortizes out to be like 95% of the cost of the class. So let me know if there's any problems, if there's any information they need. They usually do not, because if I send you over there, they're going to be like, oh great, here are these forms, and then scan the notes.
Okay.
So thank you very much, by the way, for volunteering.
Okay.
And the good news is, once you do this, if you ever do it for another class, you're already in the system, and
sure.
you're just done. You go and they just pull up, they make another copy of the last page, and you sign it, and you're in.
Excellent. All right.
So I appreciate that very much. And like I said, let me know if there's any problems.
Okay.
But I did it at Orange Park. They were terrible, and I had people who were like never paid. But over here, they're really good. They're really organized, and then we'll get you in. Yeah, they're pretty good. And so yeah, and
and it should work out perfectly because occasionally there's a problem when I teach the night class where when like we finish at 8:45, you can't go copy
Right.
the notes. But and then like this problem like what if the test is next time and whatever. But we let out at 4:10. They're still open I think until 5:30, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you very
See
much. I
next
really
week.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you guys have a question?
I do. I could use your help creating some structure, like so I
Okay.
can actually succeed in this class.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I take better notes for this class.
Well, I just like I don't like I guess I'm learning to be a student again kind
Yeah,
of thing.
so that-
So I was curious, like like what can I do for homework, or or is there certain chapters I can read to follow along with
Absolutely,
you,
yeah,
or
yeah.
what
Let
what do
me
you
show
what can I
you-
do? Tell me what to do.
Let me show you the book
But he was
first.
basically
'Cause I
saying
have the
that
book, yeah.
The test and the quiz are not gonna be based off the book, it's gonna be based off the lecture.
Yeah.
and
The good news though, the book honestly is like, let me turn off the slides so I'm blinding because I can.
So could I skip reading?
I mean, I would say like I don't require the book, but on the other hand, like pretty much everything I'm going to say is in the book somewhere. And so, I mean, if you want to read the chapters that go along with the book at the same time, that's not a terrible thing to do. It's a pretty good thing to do. And so, I mean, if you feel like you want to do something else to kind
well,
of
how can I know where we're at? Also,
Yeah,
to
like, how do you know where the
break up the
reading in the
section
book?
or like what?
Because when you read
Just
the
so I don't
whole
go
chapters,
ahead or
you're
just-
all over the place.
Yeah, I do. They do it, thematically. Yeah. And so, I mean, like, I tried to go kind of like the reconstruction chapters 15, and it pretty much goes chronologically.
No, I noticed that you are kind of following along in that
Yeah.
essence. I just like
Yeah.
still I wish I knew like all right, just read this today
Yeah,
and read this
so I-
tomorrow or whatever.
I mean, I
I'm
can
doing.
definitely tell you that 15 is gonna be the reconstruction part, and then the West we're gonna talk about is 16.
that's
So should I try to
chapter
read
16.
the entire 15 before next class?
I mean, if you want to do that, and then that will catch you up. That's what we've covered so far.
So chapter 15 and 16?
16 will be the Indians that we haven't done anything yet. They're just
So
10
that'll be
minutes
next
out.
week.
Okay.
And so, and 16 we're only gonna do the first part, and then the second to last part.
How about being successful in the test? Like, is that going to
Um,
be the review sheet? Do I study that, or like
yeah.
that's what I'm wondering? Is it based off of my notes? Because like I don't want to miss something. Is my
That's what I was saying.
Well, yeah,
That's
what
what I
I'll
was
do, I'll
wondering
show
if
you
it-
the
if
review
it's
sheet. Do I
if
have
it's-
an extra copy of the review sheet?
But if you don't,
I'm just
do,
not sure if
I
I'm
do.
supposed to study that. If that's that,
Yeah,
or like
I
if
said,
I
the
need
book
to
is
pay-
great because most of the stuff's going to be in there, and so if you read the book, it's like another way to get it. But if you, I'll go ahead and give you that one. Let me make sure I'm not giving away my last one. So
Okay.
yeah, okay. And then I'll go ahead and
Thank
give you this
you.
one. And then if you see, it's just a list of topics. And what we're going to do is when I get to the test, I have questions about each of these things. And so I start at the
So
top.
everything on the review sheet is gonna be on the test?
Yep. Absolutely.
And more on the test?
I mean, this is the test. It's just going to be, and these are obviously not in detail in any way. It's just a list of
to
topics.
know a lot more about. those
Yeah, and
things.
so like when I say 13th Amendment, there's obviously a lot more there, but like that would be if I say 13th Amendment and you know like ban slavery, 14th Amendment did a bunch of stuff, Reconstruction, 15th Amendment, black people vote, then you should be.
I feel like stupid because like I don't know any history to be honest. I feel like I know.
I mean, it's okay. Everybody's,
No, that's what
if
I'm
you knew it
saying.
all,
I
you
just
wouldn't
started
be.
school too, and I'm feeling the way you feeling. And I took 20th century humanities
Mhm,
for summer A.
Mhm.
I was in there crying, literally, like,
Who did you take it with?
Dr. Savage.
Mhm.
Oh my God.
Savage.
Like, it
That's a rough class to dive into because
I was
it's.
mentally drained, and
Yeah.
I made it. I gotta be in that class, but it was hard because his is based off of lectures as well. So what about the test? How many questions are?
What I typically do is if it's all multiple choice, it's 50 questions. And 50 times 2 is 100, right? And if I ask you to write a short answer, however many points the short answer is, I just take off that many multiple choice, right? So if it's like 20 points a short answer, then I take off 10 multiple choice or whatever, or however that would work. And so the short answer, if there is one, is between like 20 and 15 points, something like that.
And then can I record the lectures?
If you want to, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I need to record.
Yeah, if you wanna
This
record
was
them
a
and
lot of
listen again. It goes
information
fast, yeah.
to take
I had a
in.
girl who recorded them, and she was a note taker for a student who had a disability and needed the notes. But she said, make sure I get the notes good for the student. I recorded